Welcome back to the weekend wrap. No production, just my thoughts. As always, please like and subscribe. Share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. Wow. Last night was. It's been a while since we've had a spectacle in the UK that was like fully lived up to all of the hype and the drama, the intrigue, and most importantly, the entertainment. Chris Eubank Jr., Benn, that definitely delivered. Now, usually when I do these raps, I like to try and go in chronological order, and sort of go through the weekend as it is and how everything's kind of crescendoed. But I think, look, just like I did with basis picks, we're gonna go straight to the main event. Now, just before we get there, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who tuned into my watch along last night, or I guess both parts of my watch along. I knew there were so many that was happening. There's obviously is myself, as Ade Oladipo, as G-Man, is October Red, Fight Fan TV Live, Ring IQ, Boxing Beats and Rhymes. Then you had like some of the bigger ones like the Pain Game and Talk Sport and whoever else and whatever, if that's your fancy. But a good selection of you chose to rock with me, and I appreciate it. A bit of a crazy thing though. When I was actually doing the live, just before we get to like the event, I'm looking at my screen. It kind of tells you kind of how many people are watching supposedly, and as I get on there, it's telling me it's about like 60, maybe 70 people. I know obviously quite a big chunk of that usually will be coming from Twitch and as opposed to YouTube, trying to get everyone to come over. But it was just looking at that like fairly steadily throughout the night. Okay, the comments and stuff come in. Then I reach my 6 hour time limit that I have on my streaming platform, which I really do need to try and get amended or sorted out. Probably if I'd have known prior that it had that as a cap, I might have just stuck with StreamYard, but that's a whole nother story. But then as soon as I've basically shut that one off and then started a brand new one immediately without fixing it up, without customizing anything, that as soon as the next one opens up in the 11th round of the fight, then it just springs up and says that I've got like over 700 people watching just instantaneously. Yeah, I don't really know what to make of that. I don't know if that's a glitch in the matrix, but I might have to start just hitting the live button from now on, if that's the uptake in viewerships that I'm going to be getting. But look, it was an amazing event. But let's talk about that main event now. Leading into it, you guys know I picked Benn to win the fight. There was just a lot of variables on the Eubank Jr. side I didn't necessarily like in terms of preparation. I've primarily said on several occasions, I don't think he is comfortable. Comfortable is the wrong word. I don't think a lot of fighters are comfortable, but he just doesn't look good at 160, and he hasn't done for a while. He can quote unquote make the weight, but even the way that he makes weight, I don't think is correct, especially maybe not for his body, in my opinion. He seems, in my opinion, this is just me, he seems to follow a pattern very much like a lot of UFC fighters. Just do a huge weight crash right at the end, strip down as much water as possible, and then just try to refuel afterwards. And I don't know if that's the right way to go about it. I don't know what check weights the BBBOC do before these fights and how many pounds and percentiles you have to be in to your fight weight on the fight week and a couple of weeks before. I know the WBC have several check weights prior to a bout to make sure that people are bringing their weight down gradually. But yeah, I've never really liked the way that he makes weight. to get to that 160. And just outside of that, you had the 160, you had the rehydration clause, you've got the family turmoil, you've got the small ring, and then you get to the fact where you just know that because of that 160, you can tell it takes something out of him. There was all of that. Plus, obviously, Conor gets to, fight closer to his walking around weight, gets to sort of stay fueled and replenished and not really lose much between sessions. Plus the explosiveness, all of that stuff told me that Eubank Jr. and you kind of factor the rehydration clause in there as well, but it's not a huge factor. It's just, okay, you don't really get to properly replenish. But I would also maintain that if you were making the weight correctly to begin with, you wouldn't lose so much of yourself in the weight cut to then have to replenish as much afterwards. But it's a whole nother story. But when Chris Eubank Jr. pulled up in the cab with Chris Eubank Sr., immediately I said, "Oh, I think Chris is now going to win this fight." People could see it on my stream. I was like, I didn't directly say, "Oh yeah, I think he's going to win." I still had some reservations, but that gave him that extra 5-10% that he needed to see things through. And it was right, look, it was right for Senior to be there to protect his son, as he said. One thing I will say, and I've, actually, let me talk about the fight first, then let me talk about everything else. So we got into the ring, and in the first round, one of the first things I would notice that Junior was trying to keep Conor obviously on the outside of the jab. Every time Conor was trying to step in, he was trying to sweep that little sweeping left hook, that little long lead left hook. And there was something at that time about the legs that I don't know, something looked a bit off, almost like there wasn't enough energy in them. And even just before the fight, he was begging for copious amounts of water. Like he was like, "No, give me more," really trying to get extra fluids in. So I was actually, I thought, okay, he is still majorly dehydrated. But he managed to keep Conor at bay in that first round quite effectively. And every time Conor started to get onto the inside, Eubank would come in, grab, be a bit dirty on the inside and start talking to him on the inside, but then try to push him back. And that was the same thing I said in Basis Picks that he would have to do to win this fight. Try to keep him on the outside, try to make him pay coming in, and then as soon as he gets in, grab hold, walk him back to the ropes and just try to sap his strength and then go down the line that way. In the second round though, it got a lot more interesting. Conor started to he started to get a little bit more of his rhythm. Timing was definitely off. Adjusting to the size difference was definitely a process for him at that point. But he was managing to sort of try to get a bit closer, and it almost looked into me in the corner from like the end of the second round, like Eubank looked dead tired, like he was breathing heavier than I normally see him breathing in fights. So I could tell, okay, I feel that this, whether it's the pace or whether it's everything else, it's getting to him. The age is starting to catch up, making this weight that isn't healthy for him is starting to catch up, all of that stuff there. Then in the third round, I thought, okay, the prediction might be sticking, because Conor got a really good foothold in that third round. Not only did he get a good foothold, he landed a hellacious left hook onto Chris Eubank, which caught him like towards the bottom of the chin, like turned his legs into jelly. And it was only due to Chris's very good survival instincts how he was able to get close to Conor, grab him, hold him, and just stop him from being able to fight, and keep holding even when the ref's trying to break them to try and get his legs back. But it was very reminiscent, obviously, of what happened with Liam Smith, to the point where, but in that one, he was naive, because what happened there never happened before. And he obviously went and he maybe done a few cardinal sins in getting up too quickly, not allowing the legs and the balance and the equilibrium to settle, etc. But this time he hung on, he kept it, he tried to keep a bit of distance after that. But you thought, oh, okay, he's in trouble. And he didn't really look comfortable for the rest of that round. But round 4, he came, I mean, look, he came back in round 4 and started, this is where he started to now take over the fight. And ultimately, it was a case that he couldn't really do much moving. So all he could really do was just try to out hustle and outwork Conor. Conor was just trying to load up for one. It was like a one big flurry per round or one big explosive shot followed by like a combination. Whereas Eubank is just popping the jab out. He's trying to pop the jab. He's trying to pop that left hook. He started to then try to bring the backhand into the body from the 4th round as well. And just based off the activity and aggression alone, he won that one. Then the 5th round was, you know, another pretty good round for him. But then to me, round 6, 7, 8 those were rounds that could have kind of gone either way up to most people. Now at that point, I think I had it scored. I think I had it 5-3 after 8 rounds. And then I had it 5-4 after 5, and then I had it 5-5 after 10. And it was only then obviously in rounds 11 and 12 where Chris basically he dug in. He just said, you know what, I'm just going to swing for the fences. Now at this point, Conor Benn is also bone tired. Like, he's not been up at this weight. He's not had to throw punches at someone this size for this length of time before. But he's managing. He's got that very good lateral movement, the pendulum motion, you know, over, under, dipping down low, getting underneath the shots. And Eubank he's throwing the shots. They're not really accurate, but you throw enough of them, something's gonna land. And there's a couple times I was looking in there and I'm seeing Conor looks like he's riding and maybe getting pressured and rolled on the ropes. And all I could think to myself is, thank God Howard Foster's not in the ring here. Because even though Conor is, you know, he's swaying, he's moving, he's trying to find a moment to punch back in these moments as safely as possible, but he's not throwing. So it was good that obviously Victor Loughlin was in there, actually saw that he was still very cognitive of what was going on. He wasn't in major danger, wasn't taking loads of unanswered shots, etc. But in those rounds, it's just a case, you know, Conor dug in. He tried to fight back. He tried to fight with the bigger guy. But Eubank just had that heart, that steel, and that determination to say he wouldn't be denied. And it ended up being a tremendous fight to watch. It's now probably the #1 fight of the year if you include everything involved in it. So not just what happened in the ring, but the entire build-up and what it basically meant to, I guess, the British public. Joshua Buatsi and Callum Smith is still, it's up there. And maybe if you become a bit more objective in just the quality of the actual fights themselves, that one still might end up being the #1. But just in terms of an overall, you know, like a storyline, you know, with a conclusive narrative, all of that stuff, it is some of the best theatre that we've seen this year, and maybe for a lot of years, to be totally honest. That being said, I want to give some credit to both guys. I need to give obviously credit to Chris Eubank. He had to make a lot of concessions here, which for me is very strange, as to, you claim to be the A side, yet almost every single concession went against you. The ring size was what Conor asked for. You had the rehydration clause on you, which obviously I know your team wouldn't have asked for. You're the one that had the huge penalties for missing weights or for not adhering to parts of the contract. The weigh-in, I think you were the one that asked for a specific time at the weigh-in, and that wasn't adhered to. Your team didn't want horsehair gloves, but somehow they managed to still be approved. There was just a lot of things here. Now, maybe that's because Matchroom are just better. Maybe that's because Eubank's team are incompetent. Maybe it's just the fact that that's what had to happen for the fight, and ultimately Chris said, you know what, even with all these concessions, I will still prevail and I will still win this. Or we could also look at it and say maybe this is the reason why Chris Eubank Sr. never wanted this fight to happen, never wanted this event to happen, because obviously he is very fond of Conor Benn. He has utmost respect for Nigel, even though the two of them still have a somewhat shaky relationship together. But ultimately, he's like, well, you say that you want to be the captain of your own ship, but your ship is not being steered correctly because you have people around you that know nothing of the dangers of the sport. And unfortunately, everything that Senior said was correct. Like, it's almost like, apart from the press conferences, every other thing that you would expect to go to the quote unquote A side ended up going to the B side. Like, Conor Benn got more concessions than Eubank throughout this entire thing. Not to mention, they both ended up getting, from what we know, being paid the same. And now you've got to take 500,000 from your money to go and pay him. So technically, he ended up making more money than you in this fight as well. So much for the A side, B side talks. It's just that whole situation is just a bit mad to me. But on the other side, you say, how much credit do I then want to quote unquote give Conor if he had basically every consideration that he asked for, or everything in his favor? Well, then you're supposed to win the fight. Like, it's all set up for you to win the fight. And if all of that was set up just for you to be able to go the distance, I mean, what are we really saying? One thing I do want to say, and this is, look, and you guys are free to disagree with me. I'm sure a lot of you will. But if we talk about like Conor, and they said, oh, Conor's got a chin and everything. Now, he might do. Conor may not be chinny. Like, Nigel wasn't chinny, but Nigel got hurt. Like, quite often. He got hurt, but he had very, very dangerous survival instincts. It's like, as soon as he's hurt, it's kill or be killed, and usually he was the one that was doing the emming. But in this particular scenario, I looked at a lot of the shots that Chris Eubank threw. There was very little on them. Some of them just looked like arm punches just to be active, and others looked like he could barely rotate his shoulder into the shot. Like, I literally think that weight cut killed him. Yes, it's his weight, quote unquote, but it's not his weight. His dad told us he's not a 160 fighter. He's a 168 fighter. Obviously his dad knows what that toll is doing to his body, especially if we consider that he probably doesn't make weight in the best possible ways. Him being such a natural athlete, he probably just feels, okay, his body can handle this. And this is what he's been doing for years and years and years. But he's not 25. He's not 29. He's not even 31. He's 35. Like, it takes its toll. Hence why this is the first time ever, quote unquote, that you've actually ever missed weight. Whether you got it slightly wrong, you slightly miscalculated, you shouldn't be missing weight unless you're in the wrong weight class. So all of that. So when they're talking about like Conor's chin, ultimately, I mean, yeah, I think he held up to some good shots, but ultimately, I don't think there was as much on those shots as we think. So the jury may still be out on that one. Now, the question comes, because it was a unanimous decision. It was 116, 112 on all three judges' scorecards. They didn't all give the same rounds, but they ultimately all only saw 4 rounds for Conor. I had it 115, 113. There is a scenario where possibly I could find an extra round that you could have given to Conor to possibly make it a draw. Now, if there was a draw, people say, oh, we got to see the rematch. People are saying now, we got to see the rematch. Conor is saying that. I know Eddie made some comment about maybe we should bring him down a little bit more in the rematch. I think that was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment, but it was very poorly timed. And, sometimes Eddie does have a habit of doing that. That being said, look, him and Chris don't like each other, so why would I expect Eddie to show class and grace to Chris when he probably believes that Chris doesn't show class and grace to him. But you know, after a fight, maybe you put aside some of that and just show some respect in the moment. Then maybe go back to slagging each other off a few days later. I don't know. But yeah, look, it was, the thing is, some people are saying, yeah, we need the rematch, but a lot of people are saying we don't need to see a rematch here. Let Conor go off and do his own thing, and let Chris go off and do his own thing. Now, quite frankly, for me, the rematch came on, yeah, 100%, I'd watch it, but the rematch won't be the same fight, because that rematch can't be made at 160 pounds. Chris cannot make that weight again unless he hires in an elite nutritionist and he does things all correctly, all properly. He can't make 160. He's also then will not have a rehydration clause put on him, which therefore means that Conor's team and Conor himself may be in a lot more trouble, because now, you know, they are not more similar-ish in size and weight in the fight. Chris will be 36, so he'll be even older, obviously, by the time the rematch takes place. There's just a lot. It's just a lot more going in the favor of Conor in terms of time. But then, if Chris was then to hold all the cards, he might say, well, no, this fight, we're going to do this one. You wanted to put me at 157. We're going to do this one at 163. And Conor will never go for that. And the team will never go for that. And then that, you know, really means that Conor's in trouble. So, yeah, all of that doesn't really bode well for a rematch kind of taking place in my mind. If I was Chris Eubank Jr., as much as I know that there is, you know, there's more paydays out there and, you know, obscene amounts of money, as he said, you either take one fight at 168 pounds, or personally, based on what happened last night in the biggest moment of his career on the biggest stage, you know, with the biggest pressure on him and to deliver, maybe you just retire. Maybe this is the moment you retire from boxing. You retire on a high, you retire on a win, you retire knowing that the other team, the enemy, the ops, don't have an opportunity to get any get back. It's like the perfect story. Especially if you know, if you want to sort of maybe round out that, maybe that villain arc or whatever you'd want to call it. That to me might sound like the perfect way to go. Of course, we know that won't be the case, because boxing never really follows the perfect story endings, but that would be an interesting thing. It's obviously, it's always a bit I've always felt a little bit for Nigel Benn in this one, because obviously, yeah, he got stopped in the first fight. There was you could have maybe said that Richard Steele could have allowed him to see that the end of that round, as there was only a few seconds to go. He was still kind of covering up. He, you know, he took some shots, he did fire some back. He was, you know, he was really upset that he, you know, that he got stopped there. But in the rematch, most people think he won, but it ended up being a draw. They never got that third fight. Then you get Chris Eubank Jr., obviously born. He is of the same weight class that that Senior was, 160, 168, sort of, you know, that bigger build, 5'11", you know, the right kind of height and size for the task. And then Nigel gets Conor, who is just like, you know, shorter version of him, very lean, very sleek, but he's not, he didn't inherit the genes. Usually, the children are bigger than the parents. They, you know, they mature faster, they grow taller, they're normally a bit wider, you know, they're enhanced versions. It's very rare that I'm aware of, you know, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, please, but usually it's very rare where you get the parents that end up being bigger than the children. So, you know, Nigel never truly had a way to kind of, I guess, avenge that when the bloodlines thing came out. And everyone always used to say, oh, it's such a shame that Conor's so small, because if they was in and around the same weight class, that could have been the continuation of the rivalry. So people was talking about it from then. But there's no denying that Conor is much smaller than Chris. He held his own. He after post fight, he said, you know, like I want to do it again. You know, I can compete here at middleweight. I tell you, no, you can't. You valiant efforts. You did amazing. You deserve credit for going up there and you know, obviously seeing the final bell, and even at times probably doing more damage to Chris than Chris did to you in the ring. But you can't compete at 160. I don't even think you'd be competitive at 154. Like, I would imagine they if they want to build a career for Conor at this point, I don't know if he can make 147 again. He says he can. I don't know. He hasn't done it for like 4 years at this point. But if it were me, I would do the same way they had Margarito weight, they had Canelo weight. Maybe you just find a weight for Conor in between, maybe 147 and 154, like fighting at 151 or something, and you get a couple of welterweights who just don't want to make the weight, and you make them sort of come up, and you face people at sort of catch weights and just nothing but fun fights for the rest of your career, and you make spectacles out of them and whatnot. Because at 147, if you can make it, there's only one champion that you stand a chance of beating at this point in time, which is Barrios. But even that's not a given. It's not. At 154, you don't beat the contenders, let alone the champions. So it's, and then at 160, I mean, yeah, you might as well stop there, because as bad as the 160 division is at this point in time, there's nobody that you're seeing up there outside of an absolute journeyman that's maybe just an overweight 154 guy that you're beating. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But ultimately, I guess, you know, the Eubanks will say the procedure was parliamentary and justice was done. The Benns will say they can hold their heads high. They went into the lion's den and they came out the other side with a lot of credit and a lot of I guess a lot of questions answered as well, in terms of maybe not so much the level they compete at, because that's, we're not sure, but that you can take a punch, that you can go the distance, that you can be in the pressure cooker and come out the other side, all of that stuff. And one thing I would say is I do think that if Conor hadn't have been out of the ring for 14 months, I do also think he would have had a bit of a better showing, and he may have actually been able to go for longer in those bouts and possibly even have got that stoppage I was predicting. But yeah, look, credit to both guys in terms of just the actual spectacle itself. It was an amazing night. It was an amazing event, and I won't take anything away from the actual fight itself. Yes, there's caveats all around everything else, but it allowed us to get what we got. So shout out to them. Touching on the undercard very quickly, and this was one of the only bad things about this card. There were no knockouts. There was like no, even though there was definitive victories, there was no like statement wins in that sense, apart from Aaron McKenna against Liam Smith. I did not know Aaron McKenna had that in his locker. That was my least interesting fight of the night for me, and it ended up being my favorite fight, obviously notwithstanding the main event. Aaron McKenna arrived on the world scene at this point. It was a beautiful performance. I was critical of a lot of the switching he was doing earlier. I thought it was unnecessary, but then when he decided to stand and trade and sit in the pocket, yeah, okay, he might be a naturally bigger guy than Liam Smith overall, but Smith's got the know-how and the experience. But McKenna, he just basically danced and pirouetted around him, out-hustled him on the inside, out-fought him on the inside, you know, just out-jabbed him, just outclassed him in all departments, to the point where the fact that Liam Smith even got given, I think, 2 rounds on one of the judges' scorecards, or 1 round on one and the share of 1 on the other, or something like that, I thought was almost borderline disrespectful, because there is not 1 round in that fight that he won. Aaron McKenna, even with I think it was 2 points taken off, or a point. There was definitely 1 point. There might have been an additional one as well. But even with those points taken off, like, he still just totally decimated Liam Smith. And I think at this point in time, that might be the moment that Liam Smith decides to call it a day. if you don't have the rematch with Connor, I mean, there is potentially you might decide to do a Eubank Smith 3 just because it's 1-1, just to sort of settle the score, seeing as both of them won by knockout. Maybe you do that at like 162 rather than 160, or something like that. That might be a potential for both guys to go down. But yeah, Liam Smith, I think his day's done. I think that was the end of him. He had like 17 or 19 months out of the ring, and it definitely showed. It's time for him to call it a day. Anthony Yard and Lyndon Arthur, I predicted this one would go points, and this is the only prediction I got right, that Yard would win this fight on points. I thought it might be a split decision, and look, Arthur was doing very well up until sort of round 7-8, but then he went into the Arthur gene and decided to not impose himself in the middle of the ring and was trying to just counter Yard on the ropes, which, yes, it can work if you are openly showing how clean and effective your work is. But even when Anthony Yard is touching elbows, touching arms, just touching the body, not even really landing any significant power, but his arms are working, he's scoring. It looks like he's scoring, and it looks like he's being busy, and it looks like you are just being pushed around, not doing what you need to be doing. Some people will probably look at the stock and say Anthony Yard's stock is down again, because that's 2 fights in a row he didn't get the knockout, and he didn't get the knockout against someone that he easily got the knockout over the last time, they would say. So again, the jury's out on where you rank him, what he does next, but this definitely wasn't the statement performance that he needed. Credit to Arthur for, hanging tough, and probably, I guess, what he did in this fight is what he had planned to do in the second one, and he maybe just miscalculated, but there was still that gene of just not sticking, not having that will and that iron cast will of authority to say, I'm going to stand in the middle of this ring, I'm taller than you, I'm going to make you taste this jab all night, I'm going to make you taste this backhand. He had a lot of success with it, like I said, through the first 7, maybe 8 rounds, but he just didn't, either he was wary of what was coming back, or he just maybe didn't trust the legs, didn't trust the gas tank, which is a shame. Chris Billam-Smith versus Brandon Glanton. I got this one wrong. I truly did think Glanton would win this fight by KO. But what I will say is Chris Billam-Smith, he's, look, very intelligent fighter. He's not the greatest of fighters. He doesn't have the greatest technique, doesn't have the greatest technical prowess, or even possibly ring IQ. But one thing he does have is very good. He's very sneaky. He's a lot sneakier than you would believe. Now, maybe that's him just sort of instinctively, or maybe that's something that Shane McGuigan has coached into him. But he did very well at times where he would maybe throw a jab or try to throw a lead uppercut as he's stepping in, which would touch Glanton, or even maybe make him have to block it on the gloves. And as soon as he gets it, he just grab and hold. And he'll hold the arm on the opposite side of the ref so the ref can't see it. And then he'll put his chin on the top of Glanton's head. So anytime Glanton's moving, his head's bobbing. And he's like, oh, ref, look what he's doing. So then the ref splits them apart. And then it was, look, there's a lot of shady work in there. But it worked. It was effective. And credit to him. Brandon Glanton, he talked a lot before. You guys remember, I did an interview with him. I said, look, you're talking real spicy now, so nothing else other than a win is going to be acceptable. And he goes, I know. He goes, I'm going to show you. And look, he showed me some good stuff in there, but he also showed me that he can be outthought, outfought, and outmaneuvered, and outsmarted ultimately. Like, Chris Billam-Smith just outsmarted him throughout the fight, which is a shame, because when you look at the shots of who landed the harder shots, who looked like they hurt their opponent more, it was always Brandon. But he didn't let his hands go enough. It looked like he was always looking for that one big shot, or looking hopefully that Chris would be in the corner. But by the time he got him to the corner, Chris, like I said, pop one shot, jump in, grab, hold, tie up the arm, then let go of the arm and make the rest. No, it's not me, ref, it's him. Then tie it back up again, and the ref's fin. It was smart. It wasn't the fight I thought it would be. I thought it would be a lot more fun. I thought it'd be a lot more entertaining. I thought there'd be a lot more drama in it from both sides. I thought there'd be a lot more punches connected, and maybe That's what Chris really, he knew that maybe the power wasn't to be messed with, so he had to, you know, for lack of a better word, fiddle his way through the fight, and he did, and he got a unanimous decision, and it was the correct decision. 116, 112, I think is what I scored it. Not officially, I wasn't doing the official scorecards, but that felt about right. I think there were scorecards of 118, 110, 17. What was it? 16? No, there's 115, 113. I think 116, 112, and then 116, 113 or something like that. But yeah, look, credit to him. And then Chev Clark and Vidal Riley. Now, I'm pissed because I gave my predictions, and I said Vidal Riley to win, and I put it by a majority decision. Then I got into my own head, thought about the experience that Clark was at, and the fact that Riley normally likes to throw shots on his time, at his pace. He likes to control range. He likes to sort of pop a couple of shots in and get out, move. And I just thought that Chev, with the style that he normally has, he'll be up close. He'll, you know, come forward with the high guard. He'll try to pressure. He'll throw out the jab. He'll try and pressure forward with the jab, throw some shots to the butt. And I just thought that he would outwork Vidal Riley in those moments where Riley wants to engage. And I mean, when he doesn't want to engage, sorry. And then when he does engage, I think Chev would like try to just be cute, not catch as many shots clean, catch them on the gloves, and then try to still exchange there to show that he's having the exchanges. He didn't do much of that at all. He was very lackluster, very cumbersome. He'd been training in America. I don't know when he came back from America, so I don't know if there was any jet lag in there. I'm not putting that as an excuse, but he just seemed almost disinterested in the ring, which is crazy because on the ring walk, he seemed very comfortable. He seemed very calm. He's with Virgil Hunter, which I don't know why you make that link up. Like you do not fight in any way that Virgil Hunter can help you, unless your whole thing is about trying to be an inside fighter and just being mad comfortable in the pocket like Andre Ward was. But even Andre Ward, he had other things to sharpen and to get him to that position. That wasn't Chev's game. Notwithstanding also the horrible ring canvas. I don't know whose idea it was to have sort of the painted logos rather than to have it like screen printed actually properly into the canvas, or sewn in, or maybe made as part of it. Because every moment people are slipping. Like Brandon Glanton slipped numerous times on that canvas, like Vidal Riley and Chev Clark slipping constantly on the canvas. It was a horror show. And it's like, okay, I get it, you need to show off all the sponsors and stuff, but then make proper canvases. You had 3-4, you had what, 2 months knowing who the sponsors of this event was going to be, so you can't make a properly crafted ring canvas. That I thought was really bad, and I hate when those kind of things happen because it just ruins it. You might get someone that slips and ends up getting caught by a shot as they're slipping, which then rules a knockdown. Someone might lose their footing, and as they're trying to get it back, get hit with a big shot, which turns the tide of a fight. Or it just stops the rhythm of what you're seeing because both guys are then apprehensive to actually move because the canvas is slipping under them. It's just highly annoying. So that's something that I would like to see changed up in future. But look, yeah, with that being said, I think I've spoken enough about the event. The event as a whole, I won't lie, I like watching a lot of the stuff on TV. You know, I like going to some of them. If I've got good enough tickets or tickets where I've got a great view, I love being in attendance. I am not going to lie, I am jealous that I wasn't there last night because the atmosphere seemed incredible, and I'm sure that watching that fight, even if it's just from one angle, but watching that main event, Eubank and Jr, from that one angle in the arena and feeling the jeopardy from everyone else, the other 67,000 people, I feel like it would have been special. So yeah, I am a little bit upset by that, but that's fine. But yeah, look, let me leave it there. I've been talking way longer than I was expecting to, as I do. Sorry. Again, thank you very much for those who got me over that 2K barrier. Channel hopefully will start to get bigger and better from now. We'll start to grow. We've got more content to come. Fight Talk Live will also be streaming from the channel later on tonight, so make sure that you guys are tuned into that, and there will be a lot of content coming through this week. Yeah, we're going to get to it. But with that being said, don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Thank you. It's the weekend wrapped up, and I will catch you in the next one. But until then, peace.